Okay.
I think the students are here, right? Anna, are you with Daniela? Daniela, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Uh,
Is Anna with you?
no, she's not here with me.
Hopefully she knows about the meeting, right?
Yes, she does. Let me get in touch with her.
Okay.
Yeah. First, I think welcome everyone. This is our second session on the internship program. So we'll start with data today. So we'll jump directly into the content. So last week was more on the introductory side. This week we will jump directly into what to expect from the data. Let's say I'll introduce you to data from the animal side. So especially focusing on the dairy side, and we'll discuss more on that. We'll have next week, I think Dr. Bhandari will talk about agriculture data. So every week we will introduce you to a different aspects of data, and we'll go from there. A couple of housekeeping items before we jump in. So I know, I think I sent an email this week with the survey, pre-internship survey. So if you have not sent that to me, please send that to me, maybe as soon as possible. We need those because we need to understand where you are and to tailor our content as well. So basically, if you are not familiar with a lot of the content that we talk, we need to maybe put it down and maybe start from introductory sessions, right? So that's the purpose. And also we will be evaluating like its students also. All of you will get credits, but for our internal purpose as well, we need that pre-test, midterm, and post-test survey. So if you have not submitted that to me, send. I think I got most of you all, and thank you for those who for sending it on a short notice. But if you have not send it yet, send it to me as soon as possible. I think that would be helpful for us. Anything else, Dr. Bhandari, before we jump in?
I was going to bring up that point, so I think we should be good.
Okay, and are you seeing my presenter view, or are you seeing the slide, or what's the status on presenting?
I think we can see your presentation view.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks okay.
Okay. So because I have a lot of data and I don't want it to be really small slides, the reason I ask is we'll go through a couple of those today. So
And
yeah.
Cecil, one more thing. Do you want the students to ask question as you go, or they can ask question at the end?
This is basically very informal session, so don't wait until the end to ask question. If you have any questions, stop me wherever I am. I will be happy to answer those questions, because most of these things are new. We have some animal science students, and even for them, couple of these things are new to you, and you may not have been exposed to this information before. So any terminology that I use or any concept that I discuss, if that's new and you don't understand it, just stop me right then, and then I will be happy to explain it further. I'll be happy to make everything clear. So basically, don't wait until the end to go and ask questions, right? So
And
that's a
also you can send your questions in the chat as well. We'll take a look on those too.
yeah. So I think if you can monitor the chat, and I'll be happy to answer those from the chat room as well.
Okay.
Okay, is there any question, concern related to the internship, to the program before we jump in? Okay, I think I'll take that as a no, and then we'll get started. So, like I said, today we'll be talking about animal data and data coming from animal. What kind of data do we generate in animal industry? Especially my focus is in dairy cows, and what you need to understand starting off, like for those that are not animal science students, is there are different types of kind of production systems in the United States. There is, you will see some beef cows that are especially raised for beef purposes, for meat purpose, whereas we have Holstein cows or dairy cows that are raised and managed solely for the milk purpose, right? So the cow, ultimately the end goal for both dairy cows and beef cows, they end up as beef. So, but beef calves, they have better marbling, they have better meat quality. So if you think about steak and everything, that comes from the beef cows, right? So think about this as two different systems of raising cows, and these two systems are different based on, let's say, their breed of animal. What kind of animal they use is different, what kind of feed they are feeding is different, as well as what kind of, let's say, housing environment, what kind of set they have. Everything is different for these two systems, right? The one particular thing that we need to understand to understand this difference is, if you think about beef cows, they are especially raised in ranches, they're raised in pastures, and basically their job is to produce a calf, or maybe if it's a calf, they grow for meat. But on the dairy side, what happens is we have a set, or we have a dairy farm, and the cows, they need to be fed every day. They get milked every day, right? So we need to harvest milk from these animals every day. So that's the reason dairy management and dairy farms are more intense in terms of management, also in terms of technology use. Since all the animals are together, since all animals are inside, they are kind of housed in a one set, it's easier for management for any tools that we use. We'll talk about sensor technologies. So dairy, they are on the very forefront of using all the latest technologies, because it's in-house. We have internet access. If we need electricity, we have that access to electricity. And also if we need animal to, let's say, check, and we will go and check them immediately. It's easier to manage these new tools in the dairy industry. So don't get me wrong, beef industry is also catching up. They are also working on, let's say, drone systems. They are using other technologies to manage cows, but dairy wise, we'll talk about different robots. So we are in the situation now where we have robots. They kind of milk cows. So we used to have humans do milking for us, but now the system is so much way ahead in advance that we have robots milking cows, we have robots feeding animals. So there are new types of technology and tools involved, especially on the dairy side. So let's jump in. I would like to start with a couple of disclaimers. First thing, I am not a data scientist. So yes, we work with a lot of data, but I am an animal scientist. I'm a veterinarian, so I bring the animal perspective, right? So what do we look for in animals? And the reason I bring it here today is to give you an overview, right? So basically, not everybody is expert. So Dr. Vonari and me, we collaborate a lot. I collaborate a lot with data science program here at A&M. So we depend on data scientists, and we use them to help us understand what's going on, right? So basically, we bring the animal science perspective, and the data scientists brings the data perspective, what's happening with the data. So both of these sides are indispensable. We need both systems, because if I cannot explain what's going on with the data, the whole analysis doesn't make sense, right? So the reason I bring this up is we will have teams in our project. So each of you bring your own different perspective. Somebody will have animal science perspective, somebody will have data perspective, somebody will have crop perspective. So each of you are valued and each of you bring value to the program, right? So the reason I give it is to give you that, yes, I will talk about data, but I will talk about in animal science perspective, how you interpret those data. Another huge disclaimer that I will talk today is about products. So I will discuss different kinds of companies, let's say sensor products. Please take this as representative products. This is not an endorsement, so I'm not here endorsing one company versus other. In dairy industry, if you think about it, every day there are many different sensors coming into the market. There's lots of competition for data, so please take it as a representation. Whenever if I talk about a system, a company that I use, these are representative systems and not my endorsement. All systems, they have pros and they have cons. All of them, they come with benefits and they have pitfalls as well. So we need to be real careful about recommending, especially from the academia side, from the faculty perspective. So the goal today is I will share a lot of my observations, and also we'll talk about what kind of collaborations we do within the industry, cross-disciplinary collaborations, and especially focused on the data science. Okay, now let's dive deeper into the dairy industry. So just to give you why this is important, why we matter, why dairy matters, right? So basically, Texas dairy industry is one of the largest dairy industry in the United States. If you think about milk, think about dairy, you always ultimately think about Wisconsin, you think about California, but currently the number 3rd is Idaho, and we are 4th largest milk producing state. So that means we produce high volume of milk. And just to give you a perspective, just last month, if you take it like monthly production, we beat Idaho and we are on the verge of getting to 3rd largest milk producing state. I cannot officially put it here because we need to get the whole year like average, but currently right now, if you go and see, we are 4th largest milk producing state on a verge to get into the 3rd largest milk producing state. And why that matters is, this matters to you because there's a lot of cows in Texas. There's a lot of cows. There's a lot of this industry is growing, and that means a lot of new companies coming in. A lot of dairy advanced companies, they are wanting folks who have knowledge of data science, who have knowledge how to interpret this data and use this data, right? So I think there are more job perspective, there are more opportunity for you if you are interested in the industry. We produce almost 1.5 billion pounds of milk in a year from almost 60,000 cows. And if you think about that, that milk production is almost 190% from what we used to produce almost 20 years ago. And cows wise, we are more than doubling the cow number, right? So basically, we have a high growth rate, almost 5% growth rate in 2021. A little bit of background for the non-animal science students. So basically, if you talk about dairy industry, if you read something on the internet, or if you go and see any magazines, there's always this talk about like the small dairy farmers going out of business and the large industry, large farmers kind of replacing those. We see that a lot in Texas, right? So basically, we are one of the few dairy states that has always been growing. So from 2001, our growth rate is always positive. When if you talk about Wisconsin, California, they are on the decreasing trend because a lot of their industry is moving away in search of, let's say, cheap land or in search of labor that they can use, right? So this means that like we are growing, and that growth will continue to go in the in other years as well. So basically what I want is, yes, we see a lot of consolidation. There are a lot of small businesses going out, but they have been replaced by larger farms, or most of the time the smaller farms, they are growing themselves as well. So for example, if I was milking 200 cows last year, to be in a competitive market, to be in a business, I would need to add, let's say, 200 more cows, or now I have like 400 cows in the same farm, right? So there's growth within the industry, as well as a couple of other people from other states are moving in as well. Most of we see that movement is from California, and we see a lot from Arizona as well. So just to give you on the geographical perspective, most of our cows are on the Texas Panhandle. That's where we see a lot of dairy farms. We have a few dairy farms, dairy cows on the central Texas area as well. So basically, if you think about this area, that used to be one of the largest milk shed. Now most of the cow, they have moved to the Texas Panhandle of Texas, on the north in Texas. That's where you'll see a lot of cows. There are various reasons for that as well. So basically, they don't receive a lot of rain in Texas, in North Texas, and because they don't have a lot of rain, they do not have the problem for runoff, water pollution. There's leaching and all those environmental issues. There are less environmental issues. There are very few people living in North Texas. There's less odor issues. And the smelling of the animal, smelling of the farm is a nuisance as well. So because of a lot of those reasons, we are seeing growth in the industry on the North Texas. Let's dive directly into the precision technologies now. So basically, if you are working on sensor systems for some time, I think Agriculture 4.0, that's one of the key talking points now, whether it be in crop science, in animal science. So what they call Agriculture 4.0 is basically, on the layman term, we call smart farming. So they also call it like as smart farming, right? So it's, yes, we are farming, but we are farming with new tools, new technologies, and the ultimate goal is to enhance the efficiency of the animal as well as efficiency of the farm as well, right? So our goal is to minimize the input and maximize the output to make it more profitable. So we talk about a lot of investment in technology, but the goal is to ultimately minimize the expense on the farm. So we'll talk more on that. Another term we normally talk about is called precision livestock farming. So Dr. Bhandari is like precision agriculturist. So basically, precision term is used throughout the agriculture. We have precision agriculture. Now we borrow that term into the livestock, and we call precision livestock farming. What that means is it's similar across the board. What that means is we are managing that animal or that entity, that farm, as close as possible, right? So basically, there's a saying, if you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it, right? So basically, if you turn it around, if you can measure it, there are opportunities to manage it, right? So if you measure something, if you measure the, let's say, output of an animal, you can compare that to the group. You can compare that to the state and see if where C is, and there are opportunities for management, right? So basically, the goal is to take as many data points as possible. It could be from the same animal, from different parts within the farm, and utilize those information to manage that animal and that farm, right? So basically, that's the goal for precision livestock farming. I'm sorry. We focus a lot on data. So basically, whether you call smart farming, precision livestock farming, we are kind of generating data. So somebody was talking to me. Right now we not only produce milk, but we also produce data, right? So basically, there's lots of data coming in. So I think I've been talking for 20 minutes. Now I'll ask you all to jump in. So I have a cow here in the picture. It's a Holstein cow. So basically, this is a dairy cow with black and white spot. And I have different circles. Like if you see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 circles. Can anyone make a guess why I put circle in that animal, and what do you think is going on? Anyone?
You could measure. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, you could measure like feed intake, or you could measure lameness to a degree, or milk output. That's kind of what I'm noticing.
That's definitely true. Anybody else? Anyone has it? So there's no wrong answer to this, right? So you are not gonna get penalized. Anything that you guess would be valid. So that would be somewhat interesting to see what you think about it. Okay.
I thought, I think you are measuring some movement using something in the feet, in the front leg.
Yeah. And anybody else, and anything else? Anybody want to make a guess? Okay. Okay. Now I think I'll answer this, but starting next, I will maybe pick somebody to answer that. All right. So I want this session to be more interactive. So I don't want you all to falling asleep on me and doing something else. So basically, that's I'm sorry. That's basically same. I think Jack made a good point. These are all points that where we can measure now. So we are at this point in time, we are able to monitor this same animal in 7 different ways. There are different sensor systems available that we can use to monitor these animals. And to start with Dr. Bhandari's thing, so this on the leg, if you see the circle, that's what we will discuss today in depth. This is what we'll use for this project as well. This is called pedometer. Pedo means feet. So if you talk about what the origin of the word, pedo refers to feet, and meter is like measuring, right? So basically we put that sensor on the feet and that will measure lots of things. So we will talk about what that will measure, but I have this person running. So basically similar to what you have on the human side, we have Fitbits, we have Apple Watch, we have lots of other companies that produce digital watches. One of the feature they use is they will count steps, right? So they will tell you how many steps you took, and maybe sometime they will nudge you and maybe wake you up and tell you to stand up. So if you are sleeping on your table for some time, they will ask you to walk around. So that's the basic concept. It's the same system. It's called accelerometer, and that accelerometer measures 3-dimensional movement of that animal and basically gives you number of steps, so in terms of cows, how many steps he took throughout the day, how many times he lied down, how many times he stood up, and how long was that, let's say, duration of lying. So all those kind of things. And why that matters is that matters to us as an animal scientist or on the animal side, because that helps us to understand that animal. If she is sick, she may not be that active, she may not be that that high on steps. We might go and intervene, or there are numerous other uses. So basically we'll talk more on that, but this is one of the most common tool, most common sensor system. If you go on the northern Texas panhandle, most of the dairies right now, I think they are moving towards this revolution, right? So that's kind of coming up as a revolution, and we'll talk more on that as well. Another sensor we have, let's say this one over here, it's we have a clock in there. So a little bit of background on that is this is measuring some time as well, but this time this is measuring something called rumination. So if you go to your biology lecture or anything you took on livestock production, cows are considered ruminants, right? So these are ruminants, and one of the features for ruminants is they have 4-chambered stomach and they ruminate, right? So basically rumination is, let's say, bringing the bolus back to the mouth, they chew it, and bring the food and swallow the food again, right? So basically, if you think about cows, they eat everything very fast, and then they swallow very fast, bring that food again to the mouth, chew it again, break it down, and swallow that back. Right? That process is called rumination, and there are sensors measuring those rumination. And why rumination? Basically, that process keeps you if the animal is healthy, if the animal is sick, if the animal needs any attention. So if she is on a subclinical phase of a disease, we will be able to track that animal. Another system, like I said, I have a fork and knife in here. Like I think somebody said, we will be able to monitor how much that animal ate throughout the day, how many bites she took, all those kind of minor details. And I have a thermometer in here. There are systems in place now, like they put it on the ear of the animal. What that will do is they will monitor the real-time temperature, right? So basically, if we are sick, what happens? First indicator is fever, right? So all animals like us, they have fever as the first sign and symptom. And if we can measure that temperature on the real time, we'll be able to identify that cow as a sick and treat her as well. There's another tag on the ear as well. Basically, it's giving a geolocation. So it's not that in advanced stage yet, but they are trying to implement it. Basically, it's for larger farms where they will be needing to find a cow. Let's say if I have 5,000 cows in my farm and I need to find this cow that's getting sick, maybe this geolocation system would find me or help me find where that animal is and come and take it to the treatment. And on the stomach, like I said, our cows, they eat a lot, and basically to produce a lot of milk, they need to be eating a lot. And if they are eating more than that, there are a lot of diseases associated with that. I don't know if you know about, like, bloat is one of those disease conditions. Acidosis is another disease condition. So if we if you could monitor that, we'll be able to feed that animal properly. And another last thing is basically our cows need to get pregnant, and we need to breed those animals so that they can start lactation again, they can start milking again. So basically, we have sensors that help us identify if the cow is in heat or in estrus, and so that we can breed that animal and make her pregnant, and she can start the lactation again, right? So that's for that purpose. And final thing, the most important thing is udder, mammary gland, right? So we're talking about dairy cow, and that's where a lot of the money and a lot of the focus on the dairy farm is on the milking side. So we have sensors that would able to detect, let's say, if the cow is milking properly, if she is giving adequate amount of milk, adequate amount of fat, protein, lactose, and also diseases associated with the mammary gland, right? So if she is making milk, there are diseases called mastitis, there are pathogens, there are somatic cell counts, all of those could be detected and help us with identifying if she needs any attention. So if the mammary gland of this animal is sick, she needs to be treated so that she can start again producing more milk, right? So if she has a faulty mammary gland, a sick mammary gland, she may not be producing as much milk as she has a healthy mammary gland. So the whole reason is to produce as much milk as possible. Okay, any questions? Yes, Mahendra.
I have one quick question. I think the geospatial students would be interested on this one, Jose and Anna. So you talked about this geo positioning of something. There is a tag in the ears to know the location of those cows. And then you said there has been some problems with the accuracy, right? Is that,
Yes.
do you have any idea what was the problem?
Yeah, that system is in a rudimentary phase right now. So they are basically trying to use it in-house and somewhat in pasture as well, in the rangeland, right? So basically, if you think about a whole plot of field and trying to find that animal, there are a few problems with that. First is internet. So most of the time cows, they walk around. Sometimes they may be out of the internet, out of the sensor. So the company is trying to modify it and refine that system to bring it up. And most of some other times it's the sensor itself. The sensor, there's whenever we talk about sensors, they are electronic devices, right? So there's a high failure rate on that as well. So sometimes the sensor dries up, sometimes they do not respond, and most of these sensors, they have a hub on the office or milking parlor. That's where they have high rates, but as soon as they go out, there are problems associated with that. There are a couple of companies coming with new products on that, but like I said, this is in fact still on the rudimentary side to identify cows if they are on a specific location on the farm, or if they are grazing outside as well in the pasture. So that would be very helpful to find where my cow grazed, so that we can manage the grazing, all those kind of things, right? So yeah, that's where the total, like, I think the industry will move towards, is trying to use this geolocation to see where the animal was grazing in the past week, so that we can rotate the pasture, we can rotate her into another pasture and graze her in another pasture, so that we give her some time for that plot of field to grow back again.
So, Jose, I think you have been working on this weed mapping system that you had with the cell phone. Would you like to comment that maybe we can get some idea of something on this one?
Right. So what I've been working is slightly different, but I'm not sure if it can be implemented here. So basically, what I did was I created a website that you open on your iPhone, and basically, I mean your iPhone, it's gonna have internet basically everywhere. Um, so and it also has access to your location, so allows you to add a market, of like where you are.
But do you see something that can be done with this geo-referencing, having some kind of maybe, I don't know, maybe a tag and then correcting it with the geolocations, positions, and things like that?
Well, if like so, Dr. Sushil, he mentioned, that the issues right now it's because the devices that get out of range, it doesn't have data. If like if we were to use like kind of like a USB modem, like uh, basically that allows you to have data everywhere, then you won't have an issue anywhere. I actually have one in here, but it will have to be like smaller actually. But uh, um, I'm not sure if like on each cow, but maybe around, and uh, basically create smaller Wi-Fi networks.
Yeah, I wonder if we can make one cow is supplying the Wi-Fi network for
Oh,
rest of the one.
that
I
would
know.
be good. Like, finding an internet cow supplier and
Yeah, so that we can kind of create a hotspot and then communicate with the other one, like a Internet of Things or something like that.
Right.
That's a great discussion. I really like where we are going. I think that's the future is, yes, there are things, but they need to be changed, and we need to think out of the box, like maybe with the transdisciplinary collaborations on how things could be improved. I think there are limited research on that system as a whole as well, but that's really a great point. And I think, Jose, your work on on website where you can geotag. I think if we can get some, let's say there are something called iButtons now that they are available. So those iButtons, if we can put it on animals, and if we can, let's say, have a reader that reads those iButtons, I think it's definitely workable, and we can identify, let's say, where that animal was and what we can do with that system. So there are things that we need to like work creatively, but I think that we can make those things work. Okay, let's keep going for the interest of time. So I think I briefly mentioned about I'll briefly mention about this. I'll not go deeper because I would like to focus more on the pedometer sensor today. But this is something also the farm of the future kind of thing, right? So this is where a lot of the industry is going now. They are called voluntary milking system or robotic milker. So what's happening in this picture is this is a robot. So basically, Lely is a company that makes this robot. There's another company, DeLaval, that makes another similar blue robot. So what happens with that is this cow is freely walking around on the pen. Anytime she feels like getting milked, she goes to the robot, and the robot will automatically milk it. There, you don't need any human being over there. The robot identifies the teeth ends, identify the mammary gland, and basically cleans the mammary gland, and does all the procedure that happens on a regular commercial farm, and harvests the milk out of that animal. The reason I bring this up is there are multiple data points that are collected by this robot anytime this animal is milked. Let me bring one thing up. So I get a lot of questions from students. So if a cow is left outside, let's say, do you think she will go on herself to get milk? Right. So most of the time we take the cow to a milking parlor, we force her, but the physiology of that animal is so built up that, let's say, if she has 12 hours or more of milk retention in the mammary gland on the udder, that's where the cow receives a signal, and she needs to go and dump it, or she needs to release that stress, right? She has some hypertonic stress in this mammary gland. So basically, because of that signal, all animals, they would want to release the tension, release the milk tension. So even without forcing those animals, the animals go and visit the robot. So that's the reason it's called voluntary milking system, because no one is forcing those animals to go and get milk. So they are voluntarily getting milk, right? So this is a lot happening in the industry, especially in the Texas. I think within the last 2 years, we had at least 6 or 7 different farms. They completely went robotic. So there are a few benefits of getting robotic. First thing is you don't need as much people to manage those animals. You don't need milkers to milk those animals. You don't need a lot of feeders. You don't need people to push that feed and get those animals eating, right? So basically you save a lot on the labor side. And also it's better welfare. You get a lot of data points. So there are a few data points that I mentioned here. So every time the cow is getting milk, she receives some feed. The amount of feed she eat, it also recorded. There's something called body condition. So how much fat that animal has, how much thick she eats. So that will be recorded. Her weight, and how much, let's say, if she is coming too often, or if she is visiting every other day, or if she is getting milk every 2 days, we get that information as well. And like I said, you get tons of information from the milk, like fat, protein, lactose, flow rate, conductivity, somatic cells, everything that happens on the milk, you get recorded. So like I said in the beginning, if you measure it, there are opportunities for improvement, right? So based on this, so if the cow is not producing enough fat or enough protein, you can maybe change something in the nutrition of the animal, feed a higher protein diet, or maybe help her recover from any diseases she has and help her get better, right? So the more milk you produce, the more money comes to your farm, and the more fat and protein you produce in that milk, the better your paycheck is, right? So that's the reason the producers, they want to know what each animal is producing. And this is just to give you an overview of like the farm of the future kind of situation. This robots also have, let's say, multiple sensors. These are all sensors measuring these things, and there are pedometer sensors on those robots as well. So lots of things in combination. It's not absolute. Let's say if they have one sensor, it's not absolute that they don't have another sensor, but they can combine those sensors and make the most of it, right? So that's where the industry is going. Another quick plugin as well on the calf side. So if you have a baby calf, basically on the conventional side, the farmers, they need to find the calf and feed them individually. But now with these automatic feeders, the calf can come anytime she wants, feeds her, and basically they give frequency of visits, rate of drinking milk, amounts of components that she is drinking. So basically, again, coming back to precision, right? So we want as precise information as possible, as precise management of animals as possible. So we want the precision monitoring, how much she is eating and what she is eating, what's her growth rate. All those numbers, all those values help us manage what's happening on the farm and make it a better farmer. Again, the whole goal of all these sensors, these robots, these auto feeders, what they do is they provide us with data points, and all these data points, we have a benchmark, right? So basically, if you have a benchmark for milk production, as soon as that animal drops down the benchmark, she's in the red zone, maybe she needs attention. If she is in the yellow zone, maybe she has a problem for today, but overall she is doing good. She could be on the green zone. So all those parameters we can measure individually, coming from total milk production, milk per cow, milk fat, protein, lactose, like, right? So how much time she spent, how was her milking speed, fat to protein ratio, all of those points, all of those data points. What we can do is we compare them to a benchmark. It could be benchmark from the same animal, benchmark from other animals, and make a management decision. All right, so that's the use of those data points. Final slide on the dairy data before I jump into pedometer thing is one problem that I wanted to bring it up. I don't know, on the ag side, I think Dr. Warner, you experience similar problem, but one of the problems we have in the industry is called data silos, right? So we have different sensor systems that I discussed. We have from one coming from the foot, one coming from the mammary gland, one coming from different information. The problem is all of these data, they do not talk to each other, right? So basically there's different company with different sensor that measures the steps. There's a different company that measures the temperature, different company measures the milk yield. So basically what the farm is, within the farm we have different data silos. So let's say there's this whole system, whole computer for your leg sensor, another computer for your milking sensor, right? So there could be if you have different sensors, you have different computer, different data silos. So we have compartmentalized this data. So this limits the use of that information, right? So this limits the use of the data. Also, the data integrity wise as well, there will be questions on that, and most of it is resources are wasted, right? So if you cannot combine those together, there would be a better management decision if you can combine these two together and make a good profit. Also limits the collaboration, right? So basically, if I want to work with other company, they may not be wanting to work with us. The main problem is conventional, like farm management systems. They are based on like linear models. So basically, they do not have complex models like maybe machine learning model or computer vision systems. They are not built on that system. They are built on linear models, and it's hard for them to combine this system. the industry as a whole is moving towards more on the centralization, basically from the cloud side, right? So there are cloud-based data warehouse, and there are something called data lakes where they pull all the data from all sensors, and there's a cloud-based software that manages the data, evaluates that, and gives the perfect recommendation to the producer. So that's where the industry is moving on the data side. Is yes, we have a lot of this. Since they are not talking to each other, we have to come up with a solution. And you will see a lot of this coming in, especially in the dairy side, data warehouse and data lakes, and even company just exist, and their whole purpose is to evaluate the data, analyze the data, and give suggestions to the producer, right? So they don't need to have anything on the sensor side, just to analyze, just analytics of the data. That's where a lot of the companies now are focusing on. Okay, and like I said, I think there are data bottlenecks and also problem with data ownership. So I think I will bring this up for maybe we need another discussion. So basically, if you are a dairy producer or a farmer, and you paid for a sensor, and you paid for the data that the sensor generates, right? So who do you think owns the data? So do you think the company should own the data? So because if I'm a company, I would want to use that data to modify the algorithm, to improve my algorithm and make it better. But do you think the company wants the data or the farmer wants the data? So it's up for discussion. Whoever has not participated in it, you can give your thought. And I can explain the question one more time if you want. Who should be owning the data?
And the students. Students, can you say something?
Okay, if now I will start calling your name. I'm sorry, I teach a lot of kids and I have this habit of calling by name. So I think I will ask Anna to jump into. What do you think, Anna? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but who do you think should own that data?
I think the data should be owned by the researcher just because they're going through the process of collecting it. And if they are not collecting it themselves, or like the farmer or whomever owns the thing that the data is being collected of, they're not collecting it themselves, then, or they didn't go through the process to hire someone, then it's just like it would have been squandered in the first place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the major problems we have is ownership, right? So the producers, dairy farmers, they invest a lot in these systems, but the company, they are using their data to refine the algorithm. So if I have a machine learning algorithm or any algorithm that based on computer like data generate, I want more data points to make it more robust and more accurate, right? So the accuracy of any algorithm depends on how much data you have to train that and to train that algorithm, as well as to have a test, right? So basically I want to have a large training data set so that I have a better performing algorithm. So company, they want that data, dairy producers, they think they have it. So it's not a huge lawsuit yet, but I think that's something brewing, because those sensors, I purchased those, I should not be, somebody else should not be using those data, right? So there are something issues like that going on the data ownership side. So that was just a quick thing that I wanted to give you and highlight. So basically, next I will talk about churning the dairy data, right? So basically, if you churn milk, what you get butter, right? So basically what I want with dairy data. So basically, if I churn the dairy data, what do I want? What I want some decisions. I want some help on managing decisions, right? So basically, we will talk about 3 things that I use, especially on my lab. So basically, I focus on oral health based milk side, so how much improvement we need on the milk conductivity and all those things. We'll talk about animal health. If we want to improve, how can we improve the animal health and production management, right? So basically those are the three things that I focus in my lab, and I'll discuss briefly on that to give you an example how those data has been used and how they could be used and utilized. Okay, the first and foremost goal is early detection, right? So for all the diseases, anything, whether it be on the animal side, whether it be on the human side, the sooner you detect the disease, you can target the treatment and reduce the loss, right? So basically, the overall goal is to have a better health and welfare, even in animals. And I would focus more on the activity behavior. Like I said, the pedometer thing, the Fitbit, we'll talk about. So these are used mostly as a litmus test, right? So basically to see if the animal is sick or not. So let's take this example for this group of animals. We have 250 animals there in this group. And if I wanted to find a sick cow, it would be really a nightmare to go and take blood sample from all these animals, to take temperature, to take the heart rate, heart sound, anything for all these animals, right? So with the use of those data, what we are able to do is maybe flag an animal, identify an animal, and we go and check that animal, find that animal, and treat that, right? So basically, this is done on two labels. One is called cow label information. So what I can do with that is, for those on the data side, for cow level information, I compare my data today with the historical data of my own, right? So let's say if my step today was 1500, if I compare that to my average, like rolling average for 10 days, I can compare that and see, okay, I am losing my steps and maybe this I'm sick, right? So maybe that's one indication on the cow level. We also go with hard level. What that means is we compare one cow versus other. So it is very risky to go on the hard level. It's because of like individual differences of each animal comes to play. There will be some cows breathing more, some cows breathing less. Every cow has their own physiological parameters. So it's very risky, but the goal is not to find out one comparison, but we pool it. We have a pooled sample, we have an average, so we compare that to the pooled example, right? So that's the approach. So we use two approaches, one hard level approach and cow level approach to identify that sickness. Especially that's on my research radar. A little bit on the pedometer that I promise you that I'll explain more. So pedometer, like I said, is anything Fitbit on the back of the leg. Most of the time you will see on the back leg of the cow, not much like the most of the same. I think the reason they put it on the back is it's easier to put it, as well as it's easier to take them out as well. But we don't see a lot of companies putting pedometers on the front leg, right? So basically you will see, I don't know if there will be a difference. I think there are research having contradictory results on if we put this pedometer on the front leg versus back leg, there will be any difference, but most of the time, most frequently, you will see that put on the back leg, right? So basically, what you will put that on between these two joints with a strap of cloth. What happens with that is these are called accelerometers, right? So similar to Apple Watch Fitbits. What they measure is acceleration. So basically, it's called 3D accelerometer. Basically calling it three-dimensional measurement, right? So they're taking measurements on the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis, right? So there are x, y, and z-axis. They are taking measurements based on movement of this leg. Based on that, they interpret it as, let's say, step, or the cow was, if the cow is lying down, or if she was taking steps, if she was lying down. What happens after that is all of these data, they are transformed into the database system. It could be on farm, and now most of it they move to virtual as well, right? So basically, they move on the virtual side, so most of them they're on the cloud, and based on that you get real-time feedback. Okay, if the animal is sick or not, if the animal is not walking properly, see had an injury on the leg, or see it's sick, we get to see that happen pretty soon. So what happens most of the applications wise, they measure 4 things. Like I said, lying time, how long that cow lie down. So to give you a background perspective, dairy cows most of the time they lie down almost like 12 hours, right? So their job is to eat, make milk, go out and deliver that milk and come back and lie down, right? So most of the time they spend lying down. At least the cows should be spending 12 hours in a day lying down. That's where we'll see a lot of those. And number of steps, so how many steps it took, we'll be able to get that. Lying bouts, so basically these bouts means how many times she stood up and lie down, right? So basically think about this way: if you are sick and you are restless, so basically the more sick you are, the more restless you are. You stand up, you lie down, you tend to see that more on cows as well, right? So we see that lying bouts frequency or number of lying bouts, and bouts duration. So how many how long are those episodes of lying down, right? So if she's spending 20 minutes today, did she reduce that to 5 minutes tomorrow? Those average bouts duration, average lying duration. These are the 4 major things that we can interpret that we will use. So I'll explain the data set that you all be using for the database creation in this semester, but these are the 4 variables that we will be using. They give mean value and the variation as well, coefficient of variation for all of these 4 parameters. And well, most of the most of the parameter they give you reading every 15 minutes or hourly, but for the easiness, for the frequency of use, we download every 24 hours. So I think the data that we will give it to you will have 24-hour data, right? It's 24-hour of how long she lied down, what was her number of steps that day, about duration and about frequency. So what it gave, where we applied that on the farm side is, like I said, on the health monitoring. If she is sick versus she is healthy, that's where we use it. Heat detection, like I said, if the cow is fertile or if she is fertile to get pregnant, if she is in heat, if she is in estrus, we can use this information to breed that animal. It's called artificial insemination or use a bull, so any on that line. And also we can manage events. So when she was bred, when she was sick, anything on that line, right? So that's what application means. So this is an example kind of base file. What we get, most of what I use, I ask a CSV files from the system. This is one of the CSV files that I downloaded. And if you see here is the date. So basically this was May 30 of 2018. And subject means like what is the cow ID. So basically every cow, they have their own ID, they have their own identification number. So this is the cow. Their daily motion index, basically how active she was, daily steps, how much time, okay, how much time she, how much were her steps. So this animal 237 took 8,000 steps on that day, but animal 266, cow 266, it took 7,000 steps, right? So if you think about 1464, this animal, this cow, she only took 5,000 steps. Maybe she might be some sick, or here's one with 3,000 steps, right? So she might have some sickness, but we don't yet know because we need to compare that to her historical data as well as her what's going on with the other animals, right? So and we get daily standing time, how much time she stood up and how much time she lied down. These are on hours. I think we need to convert these to hours, and I think I have the base file that I give you will already be in hours, so you don't need to worry about converting them in hours. And daily standing change, these are the bouts. So this animal stood up and lied down 13 times. Basically, this is how much time she stood up and lied down, versus this animal till 25 times, right? So if you see that some animals, they change their positions pretty frequently. This is like daily transition up and down. So how much time she was transitioning up versus transitioning down. So this is what you will receive. But let me dive deeper into some other data sets that we'll give. Of course, I'll explain what those means whenever we give those data to you on the base file as well. But for just for your information, what we have is we have this cohort for this study, and this was let's say around last year. So I think this was in April 2021. This calf was born in February. This was her ID number or identification number. This is the parameter that we fit in that animal. And basically this gives you her lying bout. So what's the average lying bout? 70, 45, 50, 45. So for that whole time, right? So we'll have a certain standard of time those sensors are on. We'll get that information from those animals for that duration of time. And here's the body weight for that animal if we have that available. So if you think about it, this adds up, right? So this was just for lying time. Now if you see coefficient of variation for lying time, there's lying bouts, number of steps, all those things, this adds up, sorry, to a massive database, and those database have, like, let's say tens and thousands of rows, right, based on how much longer those cows are on the herd, how much longer they are on the study, and we'll see how we can handle those, like on the database side. Okay, I think I'll briefly go over some of the research that I do. Basically on pedometer, this study was focused exactly on the lying time. That's what that you will be using. So this is the Fitbit that I used. It's called Ice Robotics from Ireland. I think this company is from. What we did was we had 210 cows with Fitbits on their feet. Basically, we follow them for 9 months and monitor diseases. So cows, one of the main problems in the dairy cows are lameness. They are lame, they are limping around. So basically due to lying time and hoof diseases. So the goal was to identify if we can see the difference, right? So basically if you see the problem here, so this is day 0 is where those cows were sick, are identified as sick and treated. So basically they were either trimming. It's similar to nail clipping or pedicure, like in humans, right? So it's similar to, we need to clip the toenails for these animals. It's called hoof trimming, trimming the nails, or we treat those animals, right? So basically if you see if the animal had a disorder or a disease and we had to treat her, she produced less milk, versus if she was just needing a hoof trimming, she produced higher amount of milk as we compare to the healthy animal. And we compared that 5 days before to 5 days after the treatment to see if there's a change in if there's a change in the observations milk yield based on the trimming status and based on the temporal effect as well, right? So we try to evaluate those. Just to give you another, so this is an index. So basically, like I said, our goal is to develop index based on cow level information and herd level information, right? So this is the index that we created based on activity of the cows. And if you see the cows that are healthy, they do not change a lot, but cows that need hoof treatment, especially with hoof disorder, they drop a lot on the index. If you compare that to cow that just can get done with hoof trimming. And I think our logistic regression algorithm we created, we were able to identify cows as sick 3 days before what the producers were now currently detecting based on their visual inspection, and the cows, they recover well after 3 days as well. So that was the conclusion from this study. Similar on the rumination, we use the rumination time. So basically, like I said, rumination is one of the peculiar character in the ruminants and in cows, and we use that to see if they have a hoof disorder, hoof trimming, and what is happening on the healthy cow. And I think we evaluated same 3 to 3 days after and before the disease event, that where we can identify those cows. Another thing, I think we might be running out of time, but I will really like to discuss briefly on is what other sensors are available and what we use. So this sensor I use electric that measure electrical conductivity and the milk. Like if you remember that mammary gland, that's where we measure this. So basically, this is the system called Affimilk, Affilab. They kind of takes the quarter level production, and we develop prediction models using milk and productivity as the outcome variables, right? So what we were able to do was identify what kind of bacteria was causing that disease. So basically, if it's a gram positive, gram negative, what kind of disease and disorder, and what kind of what we can use to identify those diseases, right? So this is again coming from 7 days before the disease to 7 days after the disease, and most of that happens within first 3 days and 3 days after the disease events. On the same line, we measure another cow side test called conductivity monitors, and here we measure like neutrophils in the milk, macrophage, lymphocytes, and see if they are able to detect that pathogen and that disease in those animals. And like I said, we were able to identify most of the pathogens that had a high somatic cell count in those disease. I think the final study that I will discuss is using Affilab system. So like I said, anytime the cow goes through this milking parlor, so this is a picture of a milking parlor. Anytime the cow goes through this parlor, they have a milk sample, and we will be able to see what was their fat, protein, lactose for each individual cow, right? So basically, that's a very advanced system, and based on that, we're trying to see if we can detect disease events. So milk fever is one of the disease most common in the dairy industry, metritis, mastitis, ketosis. We were able to detect disease based on our algorithm. Of course, it's not a high sensitivity, it's not a high specificity, and a sensitivity of 62% is pretty average, but our goal is to use other new tools to kind of improve the accuracy and use other data sets to increase that accuracy as well. So same thing with the fat to lactose ratio, we had pretty much standard average accuracy of detection. Final 5 minutes that I take, I will discuss some potential future work and collaboration, like even with data science. What we think is useful is noise versus data. I know like most of you who have been working on data, you know what is outlier, what is a noise, right? So basically, whenever on the research setting, when we want to use the data, we want normal distribution. All right, so we want a perfect normal distribution. If we have outliers, we remove the outliers. So we do our whatever it takes to get the data to a normal, perfectly normal distribution. But think about it on the commercial farm perspective, data are not always accurate, right? So basically, even if there's one cow that's an outlier that produces very less amount of milk, every cow matters, right? So one cow right now costs almost $2,000. So you are talking about one cow. If you eliminate that, you are losing that animal, right? So every cow matters and every data point matters whenever we talk about commercial farm setting. So the one goal I have is to identify what kind of noises and if the noise are giving us any information, right? So we focus a lot on the research side, on the data, on the perfectly bell-shaped curve, but we do not focus a lot on the variability. So I think variability, working with the imperfect data set, would be a really high demanding job, not only in the industry, but anywhere you go, whenever you work with data, right? So basically, that's one thing that we would be working. And also, combining animal knowledge with data knowledge, right? So a lot of new tools are coming every day. I am not a programmer. I'm not a data scientist. So big data, machine learning, computer vision, all those tools, I think we will need to utilize those tools and use those for the animal level information and hard level information to get the decision out of this information. The final thing is decision making. So decision making is a complex process. So if you are on a social science or on agriculture science, you understand that decisions are not made just with data, right? So there are lots of other variables that comes to play whenever a farmer is making a decision, whether it be economic model, whether it be socioeconomic side. So I will be investing something if only I get a high guarantee of return. So basically, a couple of my work right now are focusing on predictive as well as economic models to see if the decision support system are validated, right? So if I have a sensor system I want to use, is that economically viable? Does the math work? So if I make an investment today, should I be worried 2 years from now, or how long do I need to wait until that thing recovers herself or that pays back to herself? So that are some considerations we need to work on the animal data side. So I think I rushed a couple of slides, but almost got here. So at this point, do you have any questions for me? I know this is everything that we talk about on the dairy science, on the animal science course, and also on the research side, just giving you 1 hour and 1 hour 15 minutes. But I know I throw a lot of information today to you, and I'm not expecting that all of you will remember every bit of this that I discussed today. So my goal is to give you what's happening in the industry, what's being done, what kind of data we generate, and how we can use that data and what we can do with it, right? So I'm not asking you to memorize everything, but just think about what we could be done with that data set, what new things could be done. That's my goal. Of course, this would be our goal on the future as well. So whenever we start using that data set as the data set creation, you will see exact numbers and maybe makes more sense on that. But I think for now, that's what I ask you to take away from the lecture. Any question for me? Anything? I think you are muted, Dr. Bandari.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we need to give a chance to the students other than animal science background to react, to comment on some of the things that you talked about today.
That's excellent. Yeah, I think that's an. So let's start. On what did you feel, right? Maybe what was your takeaway, take home message from today's 1 hour that you invested? So did you learn anything interesting that you find, or anything that could be extrapolated to your work or to anything that you do? I think I'll call names because I have. So Danielia, you are on the top of my list.
Oh, I was about to raise my hand so I can say something. Can y'all hear me?
Daniela.
Yes.
Okay, so one thing I found very interesting was about, I'm gonna call it like the little Fitbit, and about finding the location of the cow. I'm My little bit of my background from back home is that I'm a cattle breeder. I do beef cattle. So one thing that we struggle a lot in a 1,000-acre farm, or even plus 1,000 acres, is finding our cows. We have to find helicopters. And I think going into that, it's very interesting because a lot of farmers, especially hitting their 80s, 60s, 90s, they don't have the resources like how we do now to find cattle. Nowadays, 2 weeks ago, I was by foot, by horse, looking for a cow that took me 8 hours. But with that Fitbit and with that location, we have the potential of finding it within 15 minutes of just searching it up. And I think that's so interesting. And would want to do something like that later on in the future to find how we can improve it and how to help farmers or cattle ranchers to help find their way with cattle. And I think it was so interesting.
Oh, thank you. No, I think that's one reason a lot of this is getting more attention on the beef side. Like I said, it's very hard for somebody to go on a horseback, find cows, right? So you may not be able to find them where she is even in the breeding season, in the calving season. So it's going to be a game changer once they finalize it, once they make it to the acceptable level. But that's really great observation. Thanks, Danilia. I'll ask Anna next.
I thought it was really interesting to hear about the different kind of diseases the cat, because in a way they're really similar to just human health problems. And so being cognizant of what makes us sick help us understand what we could be looking for in cows to determine their health. And it's just like, there's a bit of empathy, but like there's an understanding that these are living creatures too, and we're looking after them for our own gain, but also they need to be looked after in general.
Oh, that's a great takeaway. Thank you. I'll go next to Sindhu.
Yeah, today you've talked about many things like activities like on the stages and where you monitor the cattle. And you also talked about how precise and accurate you need to be to take out the data and everything. So I'm looking forward, like what's the next step or what is the next thing to do? So I'm curious.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I think that curiosity is where we want, right? So we just want to excite or want to incite the curiosity on all of you so that we can get things done. I think Tapas, do you want to comment on anything that we discussed today?
And maybe the
Hi.
computer science perspective, let's see what he thinks.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so it's really today I saw the data part. So it's really nice you already saw us that model and the prediction part you have already worked on. That's really nice. So I'm also like going forward. I just want to see like how the data you are collecting, as you told, like the geolocations, and based on that you have done the prediction, and you can get to know a lot of data. So I will see like how exactly the data you're managing, and you talked about the data lake part as well. And I want to see like what kind of process you're following. Are you following any kind of AWS services or the GCP services to make the streamline the data? Like once you got the data, by then you are processing the data and then you're saving the cloud or somewhere. Like I want to see that part as well, like how the going for the things are planning. So it's really interesting part. I just listened a lot of good things. So yeah, I'm also like looking forward to see like what's next coming on. So it's really an exciting thing for me. And thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. That's great. Jose?
Just wanted to comment real quick. I didn't know that you could collect so much data out of a cow. Like that's very interesting. Very interesting. It looks like the amount of data that we collect out of plants. It's a lot. So it's very interesting to have access to all that data and then make a choice on how to use it. Very interesting.
No,
Thank
yeah,
you.
I think that's for sure. I'd like to hear from Jack. What was his takeaway from the lecture?
Well, I mean, probably the biggest thing that kind of caught my attention was we were talking about heat detection pretty early, and I know we just kind of barely talked about it, but I'm thinking, what methods can we use to measure that? You can use temperature, obviously. You can use a pedometer to some extent. I think Dr. Ramsey covered that in his class back when I took it, but I mean, there's an awful lot that we can do with dairy science, especially because we can. There's so many. We have such intense man that this can be can expand the swine industry, less so much the sheep industry, less the beef cattle industry, but that's just kind of what I'm thinking of this right now, and I think it's pretty neat.
No, that's great. Yeah, I think there are more opportunities for research, more opportunities for involvement on that side. And I think Esther, she worked on this data set. I think in the past, a couple of those data sets, she might know her work as well. I saw one of the slide. She worked on that. I want to know anything new she learned today. Esther, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, yeah. Like you mentioned, I did help work on managing those data sets with you and Dr. Pinheiro. And I just think it's so cool how you can use all that technology and gather mass amounts of data just like that at the tip of your fingertips. And I just think precision technology is really cool. All those wearable sensors, and you could use sub-Q implants, milk sensors, I know video analysis and stuff like that, you can use that as well. And so I just think that's really cool and seeing how all of that is evolving. And I'm looking forward to learning how to manage data and large data sets and seeing how you can interpret those changes in data, and then ultimately the farmer makes those decisions. And so seeing how they can utilize that data as well, I think will be interesting to see.
Yeah.
So I'd like to add something as well when we are in this discussion session. So one of the things that both animal science and plant science have to deal is with the data. And then Sushil mentioned about if we can measure something, then we can create something. And then same applies with the plant science as well. And the goal that we initially thought about that project is to really have a different perspective on these data sets. Like we do have a computer science person here, geospatial science, someone from animal science, plant science, but all these different backgrounds. And we wanted to learn more about all these different perspectives coming in on animal science data sets, plant science data sets, and then dealing with the data set themselves. So I think Sushil did a really good job of introducing us to these animal science data sets, and I'll try to do the same thing next week on what kind of plant science data we collect out in the field, and then see how we can find that synergy and then work on the database management. It was really interesting, and even I got to learn a lot of things, although we had some undergraduate courses back in home, but there were so many different things that I learned as well. Thanks so much, Sushil.
Yeah, no, thank you all. I think it was a really good discussion, and moving forward as well, I think it would be a good way for us to interact. So I think I stopped a couple of times, but feel free to unmute yourself on the others next week as well, and have as much interaction as possible. Let's have a discussion, have an interactive session rather than a presentation or a workshop format, right? So that's the goal. And I thank everyone being here, especially on a late evening on a Friday. So thanks all of you for joining and sticking with us. I think Sindhu had a question.
Yeah, it's a very odd question. Please don't mind me asking that. So you put all the sensors and a pyrometer on the, to the external body of the cattle, right? So is it going to hurt the animal or any irritation to that, or it constantly keep the whole devices on its body? So does it affect the animal?
That's a great question. That's kind of $1,000 question, Sindhu. So basically, yeah, there's a lot of demand on the animal side. Basically discussion on animal welfare, right? So welfare of animal is top priority, and we do not want to hurt those animals anyway. So basically, most of these sensors, they are non-invasive. What that means is there's no surgery involved. It's just outside, similar to your necklace or similar to your Fitbit. So it does not harm those animals, but there should be frequent monitoring. Like you said, animals, they live outside on the manure and stuff. So sometimes these sensors need some cleaning. There's some like manure buildup on a couple of those sensors. So of course there are some management tools that we need to accomplish, but overall as a sensor itself, they do not harm that animal. And another thing is, yes, I put 7 and 8 circles on the same cow, but not all producers put all of those sensors in all animals, right? So basically, some of those sensors are on the milking units. They are there just for 5 minutes when the cow is milking. Some of them, they are throughout their life. Some of them, they are on the stomach, like just as a bolus they eat, and then they keep it rest of the ride. So there are different ways and different ways they can be implemented. Not everything is put on the animal for the duration of their life. But that's really a great question, and no one, not a single farmer would want to have at least 6 different bells and whistles on their on those cows for the duration of the time they milk. But thank you, thanks for bringing it up.
Any more questions? So, you wanna close it, Cecil?
Yeah, okay, if we don't have any other questions, so let's close it for today. And like I said, thanks again for sticking with us this Friday afternoon. And if you have not sent me the pre-survey tools, please send that to us. That will be helpful for us on evaluations and everything. So, and thank you all. We will see you next week, right? So,
and one more thing. So, do we want to make this time as our meeting time, or?
and okay, I think this is a good time for me. Anybody has a problem meeting these times? Any serious concern?
One of the things for our group, I think Jose was going to talk about it, is we do have this weekly meeting starting at 2, and then 2, right? 2 or 3?
Yes, 2.
2, and then it sometimes goes up to 6:30 or 7.
Oh,
So maybe Thursday would be better if you and your student are okay. Thursday at 3:30? 3:30 to 5?
I would give it to everybody. So I think I'm on the consortium. I might be able to join, let's say, wherever I am, but I think I'll be able to join wherever I am, but I'll leave it to any other student if they have any concern. So does Thursday 3 p.m. work for everybody?
3:30, let's say. 3:30 to 5. That should be enough for us. Right?
Okay.
For the lecture session.
Yeah, for the lecture. And I think as we close our lectures with 3 different perspectives, you will have a team and you will work outside to create the database. We'll introduce you to database system, and you will work outside to create your database on your team. So that should be a group project on your own outside of this meeting time. And like I said, keep track of your time. Don't forget to submit those times for the payment, right? So, and one last thing that I would like to close the session by is sending. I don't know if it works on the chat, but if you have any other burning interest on the dairy side, so I have a paper that I am sending on the chat room. So that would take you to the paper. It's really interesting to see the sensor technology evolving, especially on the dairy side, right? So that's going to be a good paper to reference. Take a look if you are interested. Okay. If we are good, then I think we will call it a day. And again, thanks everyone, and have a great weekend. See you all next week.
Thank you so much. And let's thank Susil as well for this great presentation.
Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Sorry, quick question. So you said that meetings from now on will be every Thursday at 3:30 then? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.